The AR-15 dissected from muzzle to buttstock. That's what we're going to talk about. This series, this mini-series, like the Lonesome Dove on ARs on Gunfighter Life. I'm going to cut this down, break it down into smaller parts. There's a lot to America's rifle. There's so much variety. It can kind of be overwhelming. You can definitely get analysis by paralysis looking at ARs and different features. And do I need this? And is free float really important to me? And what is a muzzle brake anyway? Is it really going to make a difference? All that stuff. This is a series again, so hopefully you're like, subscribe, following already. But if not, make sure you are. That way you get all of these. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns and gunfighting the right way with Almighty God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am blessed to be your host. First and foremost, I am a Christian. I make no apologies for that. God has blessed me to be a professional gunfighter most of my adult life in many different ways. I won't put in the normal bio today. I'll stick to what's germane to the AR-15, because that's going to play into today's episode. Marine Corps combat veteran, joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours, was also an urban warfare instructor under Mojave Viper. Also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Blesses in both were infantry, so a grunt. You might deduce some familiarity with the M16/AR-15 platform there. Also served as a sworn peace officer, a COP, the common vernacular, LAPD, worked regular assignments and more specialized assignments, worked with some three-letter government agencies on some of those assignments. Also been a private contractor for a three-letter government agency that I won't specify. Also was blessed to be the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters in a large metropolitan area here, CONUS, in the United States. So you might imagine from that, I've been blessed to have a lot of experience with the AR-15 platform, and I'm going to try and be as diplomatic with this as I can while being honest. Numero cuatro, that's Spanish for number 4. The 4th installment. Chugging along here on the mini-series of the AR. Tedium at nausea. Last installment, we're working away from the muzzle to the buttstock. We talked about upper and lower receivers. Talked about trigger groups, lower parts kits, pistol grip. So, now, let us talk about charging handles. Here's what I think about charging handles. The one you have is probably fine. I've done a lot of tactical stuff in a lot of tactical environments. I don't know that I've ever run anything other than the military charging handle. I mean, I've run them just for fun, but as like one of my go-to fighting ARs, I think sometimes less is more. I don't like the big giant bat wing charging handles. If you want to run it in competition, cool. If you want one, that's fine. But I like a sleek svelte gun, especially if I'm going through doorways, carrying it with a lot of kit on. I don't like extra stuff hanging out the sides that's going to get caught on stuff. I generally don't run my guns like the old school way where you grab with a finger on both sides and charge it. I generally just reach up. I think it's good and ergonomic anyway because I'm right-handed. I can shoot either hand, but in general, just reach up with your left hand and rack it. Problem solved. If it is in your other hand, you can easily reach over or reach around the back of the upper receiver and charge it. If it's purely for speed and competition and there's no other trade-off, if you want a bigger charging handle, that's fine. If you want an ambi one, that's fine. But I don't think it's necessary. And I think having the gun sleeker and svelter is better. You're talking about vehicle operations. You're talking about urban operations. You're talking about on your kit, your body armor, just less getting snagged up, getting wrapped up in the sling, things like that. Getting caught on molly and causing a malfunction and you go to use your gun and it's malfunctioned already. Things like that. I just like the regular charging handle. Again, if you want an upgraded one, that's fine, but I would certainly do a trigger first. I would certainly make sure you have backup iron sights first. I would worry about many of the other things before, for a fighting carbine. Again, for a fighting carbine. If it's a range toy, whatever. If it's a competition gun, go for speed and accuracy. But I would worry about other things before the charging handle. Again, I have a go-to AR that I've been blessed to have and run for. I'm trying to think of when I got that thing. Maybe 2010, maybe 2011. Used it many times in many different roles. Police, the commander of a tactical team, stop active shooters in competition, and I have never replaced a charging handle on it. The charging handle that it comes with, probably okay. Going back to the buffer tube, for a while there was commercial spec and mil spec. Pretty much today it's all mil spec, which is a good thing. The commercial circumference buffer tube was kind of a pain in the butt. Like, were you getting the right rifle stock? Were you not? Most of the stuff today is mil spec, but if you come across a commercial spec buffer tube, know that that was a thing for a minute. If you're talking about the old school fixed stock, it's got its own tube system, and it's got its own, like, how the buttstock attaches is totally different than a carbine. Most stuff today is set up for the carbine style stock, where you have a flat plate where the buttstock used to butt right against the lower receiver. Now you have a flat plate. Sometimes you'll have like a QD attachment. A little bit of fun backstory: when we were, doing tactical stuff in Iraq, when we first went, remember how far we've come during the GWAT. We had the old Webb green slings, a front and rear sling attachment point, and you ran it like a parade sling, like muzzle up on your shoulder. Quickly realized like muzzle down in front of us was better, so we would rig stuff up with like the green slings and zip ties and 550 cord to kind of make a quasi-tactical sling. That's what we had. We did the best we could with what we had. I thought I was super cool when I was doing police stuff, and I figured out that I could drill a hole in the back of that plate and put a shoelace in there and attach a sling to the back of that. That was super high speed. Well, now a lot of your plates are going to come with some kind of QD attachment or some kind of sling attachment point. Maybe little wings or some way to attach a sling back there. That's a really handy thing to have, and a small upgrade if you're going to run the sling that way. But if you're running the carbine style, you're going to want that flat plate. And here's the thing, you're going to have a castle nut. That castle nut needs to be secure. That is one of the most common things I think that will give you trouble. That stock coming loose, that buffer tube coming loose. So make sure it's staked, or make sure you're very liberal with the blue Loctite. Do not go cheap on blue Loctite. I specify blue. Only use red if you are super serious. You never want to move that thing. But in general, blue Loctite, said sometimes less is more, sometimes more is more. Blue Loctite. Or have it staked. That's also very good. But that castle nut can often work loose and give you issues. Kind of the classic 6 position is kind of the general go-to. Buffer tube, mil spec, and there's a myriad of aftermarket stocks. The military 6 position one, I think that M4 style is not very aesthetically pleasing. It's not very ergonomic, but it works. It's fine. The very minimalist Magpul ones, and I mentioned a lot of Magpul stuff. It's just because they make good, affordable stuff. I'm not going to knock them for it. They don't sponsor the show or anything, but there's a lot of really good Magpul stocks. I would start looking there, and if there's a reason why you want something else, a very minimalist carbon fiber thing, then yeah, rock on. That's kind of the standard. I actually like a fixed stock if I can get it. I like a fixed stock. I don't want adjustable. If you're talking about making your AR a folding stock, which you generally can't fire it like that if you're talking about a gas gun, you're not really making it that much smaller by collapsing the stock, so why even bother? And I don't want a bunch of positions. I don't want to, when I grab the rifle, wonder if it's in the right position, messing up my natural point of aim. I want to pick it up and be able to use it quickly if it's a gunfighting gun. I'm grabbing it out of the back of my car. I don't want to wonder, is this buttstock in the right position? I just want to grab it and use it. For that, I honestly like the old school M16A1 buttstock. It's a good buttstock. That being said, the collapsible ones are kind of the de facto today, so do with that what you want. And the Magpul makes some pretty minimalist ones. The pistol brace was a great thing for a while before they made it go the SBR route, but on a short gun, those fixed position pistol braces, really, really good and handy and useful. Maybe that will change, but I'll probably forego talking about pistol braces for now. If you're talking about a small PDW, you can still run them with just the buffer tube. and that's fine. It's not the greatest. You can also just push out with like a single point sling. That's even less desirable. I would rather just run it with the buffer tube in the pocket of my shoulder. It's not great. I wish we could just have the pistol braces, or I wish we could just have fixed stocks with shorter barrels. I don't know why that's a thing. Actually, I do know why it's a thing, but I don't. Anyway, just the buffer tube. If you want to just run it with the buffer tube on a short PDW type weapon, a short AR pistol, that's probably your best, most practical bet. There are all kinds of kits like short buffer tubes. There are kits to let you fold the buffer tube assembly. Just realize that in general, unless you're talking about like some other, piston variant, you probably can't fire it with the stock folded. So I don't think the juice is worth a squeeze on those. Here's a big thing that I don't think a lot of people pay attention to. Buffer tube weight and springs matter. Don't just get whatever comes and expect it to match up. Do your due diligence. A lot of this stuff, if you're talking about an M4 an M4 type thing with an M4 type profile and an M4 type buffer tube and weight and everything, that's fine. But rifles can use different springs. Heavier barrels can use different buffer weights and springs. That buffer is not just an afterthought, right? There's quite a bit that goes into that. So don't just overlook that and think, oh, I have a buffer and a spring. That box is checked. It's fine. It might be fine. And a lot of times today, with a lot of stuff being copies of the M4, it's probably going to be fine. But that could give you a lot of headaches. And I would point you, I don't think this guy even knows that I exist, but if you really want to get in depth on buffers and buffer tube weights and springs, go to Small Arms Solutions. Guy worked for Colt for a long time. A lot of R&D went into what buffer tube and what weight and what spring goes for this barrel length and this, barrel profile. All that can play a part in your buffer tube. That's a key component, right? That's kind of key to the operation of your gun. And I think for a lot of people, that's just an afterthought. You think, I'm going to get a really cool charging handle, going back to that, but I'm not going to even care about what buffer is in my gun, right? The buffer weight and the buffer tube and the buffer spring, they're all important. Do not overlook those. There are different weights. There are heavy buffers. There's also other systems like JP Enterprises has like a captured system that's pretty good. There's all kinds of hydraulic buffers. If I was going to do an upgrade, honestly, I would upgrade that before I would upgrade the charging handle. All right, let us talk about magazines. I don't want to get too off in the weeds on other stuff like optics for this series. I'm just talking about the rifle. But the magazine, I mean, you can only shoot the rifle once without the magazine, right? One at a time anyway. You could just do that forever, I guess. But magazines are important. Here's one where you probably don't want mil spec, right? Unless you're talking about the Marines' new mil spec, which is PMags, which are great. But the old military magazines, not great. The original OG was like a Colt 20-round magazine, and I actually really like 20-round mags. I prefer them to 30-round mags for most things. I know. Ludicrous. How dare I slander and not want all the capacity that I could possibly have? Well, 20-round mags have a lot of advantages. First off, they're not bent, they're straight, which that's less that the rounds have to do to get fed into the gun. Simpler is better a lot of times, especially for a feeding system. Also, the 20-round mags, continuity of training, I do a lot of pistol training. I can grab those and index those with my hand on the bottom and my finger at the top and insert those from a war belt, just like a pistol mag. So a lot of continuity of training there. Also, if I'm running covert with my rifle in the bag, most bags are not fitting a 30-round mag in the gun in the bag. Or backpack. Again, if I'm running covert, I have like a gray man backpack. I can have the gun loaded with a 20-round mag. I would rather have it loaded with a 20-round mag than an empty 30-round mag that I have to load in a hurry. I like the 20-round mags. I like the straight. I also like that I can get lower in the prone. I like that they're more maneuverable. I also like running them in a war belt because for me, I think the 30-round mags stick up too high and they limit my mobility. Now, there is a time and a place for a 30-round mag. If I'm running more mags on a chest rig, there's no reason not to have a 30-round mag for me on a chest rig because if I'm running it on body armor or on a separate load-bearing vest, it really doesn't matter to me. But I know that, right? And I know the difference. But I really like the 20-round mags. That said, a lot of times today, the standard is 30-round mags. PMag is kind of the standard. Again, the military spec magazines, not great. If you have them, I would save them for your secondary mags, your training mags. They can work. They can also not work. So they can start to give you problems, like when the feed lips get bent, and that's a big common cause of failure, feed lips going out of spec. A lot of times with the polymer, as opposed to the aluminum, it'll just break, which is pretty obvious. And there's exceptions, right? But with the aluminum ones, they can kind of just start slowly giving you issues. Again, they're fine for training. They're fine if you want to keep them for like your prepper bunker and ammo cans loaded. But I think there's better options today than the military spec. Whether you're talking 20 or 30 round mags, again, Magpul is kind of the new standard. Magpul is fantastic. They're good. One of the best decisions the Marine Corps made as far as arming the Marines, I think, was going to PMags. PMags are good. Also really good, Amen 2. Amen 2 is a fantastic amazine. This is my fourth one of these, guys, in a day. Amen 2 is a really overlooked magazine. They're really good magazines. Amen 2 makes good magazines. I would put them on par with PMag. And PMag is a great mag, but I would put them on par with PMag in my training and experience. I do believe they are made here in the great state of Idaho. Also really good, Lancer mags. Some people have mixed reviews on these, but Lancer mags, I haven't had an issue with them. They have steel feed lips, I believe. They're a polymer. They're kind of an amalgamation. Vulcanization. I don't think vulcanize is the right word because they're different materials. They're a heterogeneous material magazine. How about that? They have metal feed lips with a polymer body. So if you just don't trust, you have a thing where you just don't trust complete polymer bodied magazines because you still got a steel spring. But you might look at the Lancer mags. Some people give them mixed reviews, but I haven't had any issues. I've ran them for a while. I'm also running the 20-round mags. I don't know that I have any 30-round Lancers. That may make a difference. It may not. But, yeah. Again, PMag, really good. Amen 2, really good. Lancers, in my experience, good. The old mil-spec aluminum mags, less good. Of those, the Colt magazines, since we're talking about Magpul, you might not know, but why it's spelled Magpul. Their original product, I believe, was a Magpul. It was just I don't know if it's rubber or some kind of soft plastic, but it went on the bottom of those military spec magazines to rip them out of the gun or out of your kit, out of your chest rig to get into action. You can still get those. You can also get the base plates with like a little thing in the bottom of them to aid in that. One pretty cool feature of the PMags, if you're having a lot of mags, not like on your go-to kit for emergency reloads, but for storage, like in the back of a vehicle or something, they come with that cover. So you can put the ammo in the magazine and put that cover over top of the feed lips, and it's kind of like a little baby ammo can, a little baby polymer ammo can. So that's kind of a plus. If you're going to have extra magazines that you store in a vehicle and somewhere dirty, dusty, nasty, and it's not, again, you don't want that thing on there if you need it in a hurry. It shouldn't be your go-to emergency reload with the cover on top. But if you're going to store them in a nasty, dusty, dirty place, yeah, that's kind of a benefit to that. So those magazines are good. There is kind of a debate on magazines loaded, if you leave them loaded. I say load them up and leave them loaded. I have never seen a spring go bad from loading them up and leaving them loaded. Makes you feel better to unload them, that's fine, or cycle them out. But from what I understand about, and I'm not a metallurgist, it's the actual loading and unloading that can wear out a spring over time, not the actual staying loaded. From what I understand, I could be wrong on that. So actually cycling out your magazines may be worse over time. I'm not sure about that, but I've never had an issue with a magazine being loaded for a long time and not working. I've had mags just wear out from high use and stuff like that. But there's some extra thoughts on magazines. Magazines are important, guys. Don't overlook that. If you have 100%, and there's no 100% reliable gun, it just doesn't exist. Break open single shot 12 gauge can break. but you got a 100% reliable gun and you got a 50% reliable magazine, you have a 50% reliable gun now, right? If that's the magazine that's in it, because that's how that works. And there's also kind of debate in the tactical world, and I was always taught you never load your mags all the way up. You can totally load a 30 round PMag to 30 rounds and it will work just fine. Here's the issue that you might run into though, is if you go to insert it on a closed bolt, you may run into an issue where you go to seat the magazine and you shove it in there and you think it's good and you take off to go running or something and the magazine falls out. If you're getting shot at, you're like, well, do I go and pick up that 30 round fully loaded magazine in the middle of no cover, in the middle of the open area, or do I just keep running and the ammo is gone, right? And do you want the extra 2 rounds with a greater degree of reliability inserting that on a closed bolt, like doing a tack reload? If you're doing an emergency reload, if your gun's functioning, your bolt should be open. So in that case, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. If your gun's functioning properly, you should have enough. Again, this is where like buffer tube weight and springs and stuff come in, but if it's correct, it should, even on a fully loaded magazine, shove that round into the chamber. But do you want the added risk of not being able to insert it and have it stay in on a closed bolt? For me, I generally will not load a 30 round magazine up to 30 rounds. I'll do like 28. And you may decide to do 30. I'm just giving you the pros and cons there. That's on you. You do you. I just realized I thought I was done. I thought I went through everything, but I realized I forgot. I talked about front sights a lot, but let's talk about sighting systems. If it's a gunfighting gun, have backup iron sights. Period. If it's a fun gun, competition gun, whatever. If it's a gun you're going to take in theater, a gun you're going to run, you're going to trust you or other people's lives to it, have backup iron sights. For a lot of reasons. If I'm running an LPVO, I like 45-degree offset iron sights. If I'm running a non-magnified optic, in general, I like co-witness. True co-witness, not the lower 1/3. I like true co-witness. I like that for a lot of reasons. I like being able to, if the dot goes out, kind of quasi-use that as a giant ring to center the front sight post in. Really up-close work in a hurry if the dot goes out. Again, don't trust your lights to things with batteries. I've probably said that before. You've probably heard that if you're a regular listener. Also, if I'm doing my pre-mission, pre-trip inspections, and I'm looking, this is generally how I do it, I will zero my iron sights first. That's the fixed military-style front sight post, or flip-up back and rear sight. Generally a flat-top upper. I'm going to have a flip-up rear sight. Get it out of the way when I'm running just the optic. But I'll flip it up and I'll look through, and it should be that when the front sight is centered in that rear sight aperture, that dot is, if the sights are zeroed, that dot should be dancing on the very top of my front sight post. If something gets knocked off, then I should know, and I should be able to detect that in my pre-combat inspection. If I'm looking and my iron sights are zeroed and my dot is way off, I probably don't be taking headshots with the dot. Right? Probably don't be taking a hostage shot. You might shoot the wrong head. It's possible you might look and realize that the dot is dead on, but somehow your sights got knocked off. That is possible, but more likely your dot is off, or your whatever optical sight you're using is off. It's a good way to detect that, and you'll know before you actually go live. Also, if the optic malfunctions, I can still just use my iron sights. That's kind of the point. You can't generally co-witness like that with an LPVO. That's why I like the 45-degree offsets. Roll it to the right and rock on. Also, for really tight in close, like inside a room distance, sometimes just the 45-degree offsets are better in my opinion anyway. Just using that entire front sight apparatus, not just the front sight post, but the wings, everything, as a crude aiming point quickly and in a hurry. It's kind of nice. So again, if it's a fighting gun, I like backup iron sights. I don't care how good and reliable the optic is supposed to be. I don't care how long the battery is supposed to last. Fighting gun, backup iron sights. I'm not going to get too much into optics and different kinds of optics and brands because I'm mostly going to stick to the rifle. But I think iron sights are part of the rifle. Optics are something you may or may not want. You can always just run the gun with iron sights. I think that's where I'll stop it. If we're talking about different parts. What a series. If you listen to all the parts of that, I would call you a true fan of the show. If you are a fan, you listened through all that, you gave me all that time, I'm really humbled that you gave me that much of your time. Hopefully you appreciate the work and the thought that went into this. Hopefully you think it was of some value, and if you want to show that value monetarily, consider becoming a patron. You can scroll down, there should be a Patreon link in the show notes. Again, scroll down, Patreon link. If you don't want to sign up for Patreon and you just want to give some money, you say, hey, that was worth something to me, you can hit the Venmo. There should be a Venmo link too. You can drop a couple of bucks on Venmo. It would be greatly appreciated. If you don't know, my wife and I recently took a trip and we parked our vehicle in a locked, gated, and guarded storage place. It got broken into, and we're out quite a bit of ammo and guns. If you want to help, out on that, again, Patreon or drop a couple bucks on Venmo, that'd be appreciated. This is what I'm doing for work, guys. This is what I'm doing. Again, if you value that, hopefully you'll consider supporting. Anyway, enough about that. Your tactical tip of the day. Have you ever put together a lower parts kit into a lower receiver? Whew, it can be frustrating. Here's a couple of tactical tips. Take yourself to Harbor Freight and get one of those little magnetic bowls. All those little teeny tiny springs and rocket ships, put those in the bowl. Magnetic bowl may save you a lot of frustration. Also, when you're trying to put in those little teeny parts, get a big clear plastic bag and try and put those together inside the plastic bag. Right? Because if one of those little things goes flying across the room, and that's the last thing you need to get your AR together, and now it's going to be who knows how long because you just can't find that little spring or that little rocket ship. Right? You'll wish that you had done it inside a plastic bag. From somebody that's dropped more springs and little pieces on the ground than had myself and maybe my wife on hands and knees looking for them. Get the plastic bag. Of all the money you're spending on the AR, get the cheap magnetic bowl to hold those small parts so you don't knock off whatever's holding all your small parts on the table and they get sucked into the carpet somewhere. Or even worse, like outside in the grass. Like the little magnetic bowls and putting that stuff inside the parts that are under spring tension inside a plastic bag. I think that's a good tactical tip there. With that, hopefully what you've been waiting for, your tactical verse of the day. He himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, so that we, removed from sins, might live for righteousness. By his wounds you were healed. For you like sheep were going astray, but now you have returned to the shepherd and guardian of your souls. That's a beautiful, comforting verse. Man, I don't think it needs any expounding from myself. Thank you, and have a blessed day.